And record. Folks, hi, hello, welcome to Advanced Social Research Methods for summer 2022. Um, I always try to at least get something put together here at the front end for a handful of reasons. Part of it's just the whole hi, welcome thing. Part of it's hi, hello, this is me thing. But lastly, and this is where we'll spend most of the time here talking, uh, whether it's the summer term, any other term, I've learned folks who are doing online summer generally are carrying almost same like load that you would during a lot of other terms. And anyway, my point being, always at the front end like this, you just get syllabused to death. Just syllabus after syllabus after syllabus, start here module after start here, blah blah blah. And frankly, it's gotten to a point of absurdity with a lot of these things. I used to have syllabi that were 1 page long because that's all you really need. And now I feel like the one we have in this class is maybe 15 pages, sometimes 20 some pages for course. I won't go down that path. Anyway, suffice it to say, 90 some percent of it is just, it's boilerplate, it's the same, blah, blah, blah. It's scarcely going to be relevant in your world. And more often than not, and I don't blame a soul for this, people's eyes glaze over. It's hard to just extract like what is actually meaningful, what do I need to know versus what is just more and more boilerplate crap. So anyway, I try to at least touch on, cover, go over the real meat and potatoes, the nuts and bolts that are going to be relevant, that are going to be important, and those kinds of things. Also, of course, just to having done this for a while now, kind of anticipate and hopefully obviate some of the frequent questions, right, that also come from places of confusion and the like. So that's the goal. I just did this for another one of my classes, and that video, mind you, this is a different course, different stuff, but that was a half an hour long video, and I don't really want to do that here. So we're not gonna. And provided, I mean, kind of the nature of this course, the reason I'll get into, and hopefully you kind of already have a flavor of if you've gone through the syllabus or the Canvas course, any of that. I mean, this is an advanced course. You are advanced students. And so a lot of what's to come down the line is really going to be focusing and it's all going to be yoked to the research. It's going to be these projects. And so we're going to do it in this very stepwise fashion. And what I'm alluding to essentially is that because we're going to be doing these big steps along the way, get to the literature review piece. I will send you a video where I'll specifically talk about that and everything to do with it. We'll get to the methodological piece. And I'll send you another video where we specifically talk about those things. So I think for this, we can keep this reasonably light, pretty straightforward. But with that said, I guess I should get to the initial piece, which is the hi, hello. If maybe you already know who I am, if so, sorry. If you don't, hi, I'm Chris Collins. I will be, for better or worse, the captain of the ship, I suppose, for the next several weeks. Most of my background is behavioral neuroscience, comparative animal behavior, and it's very social adjacent. They're cozied up and kind of spoon and do some of these sorts of things. So there's a lot of overlap, a lot of relatedness, but just you might kind of see that my perspective, my biases will often kind of reflect, what I do and what I think about. So for whatever that's worth, I've been at OSU now for a handful of years. I was a professor at a handful of places prior to that, but before kind of pre-OSU, pre-COVID, I was always the guy in the lecture hall, doing the lectures and the conversations, going into the lab, having office hours and all of that. So I have never been I've never been in your seat, which is to say I've never been on the receiving end of any online course or anything of the sort. And now I've been doing this for a few years, getting more and more comfortable and that all of the time. But I'll speak about this as far as how we interact and what this looks like, some of that here in a minute. But just to know, that's some of my background and kind of where I'm coming from as we approach all of this. And so, sort of, I've already alluded to the fact that as you're kind of looking at the syllabus, the schedule, the emphasis of this course overwhelmingly is going to be diving into the research. We have readings, we do have a text, all this that I'll talk about here in a second, but unlike, right, the 100, 200 level courses, even 300 level courses where it was more oriented really hard towards the text. Let's go through the information and the terminology and the conceptual pieces, and we're going to have quizzes and exams and things like that to get to the knowledge. At this stage, at this advanced stage of a research course, we're going to presume that a tremendous amount of this is already kind of under the belt. It's not to say that I anticipate all of you having this extraordinarily comfy familiarity with research and analysis, statistics, all the stuff we're going to go through. This is very much still a learning process of acquaintance with that, familiarizing and getting comfortable and everything else. But we will be approaching it with a definite, a philosophy of being more advanced. None of this is to say that you shouldn't ask questions. None of this is to say that you should know the answers. None of this is to say that you're on your own. Again, I'll come back to this in a few about exactly what I mean by that. But, so let's quick touch on just the few things that I think are worthwhile talking about now. Because as I said, we'll have lots of other videos along the way that will directly pertain to what we're facing at that point in time. So right now, day one, week one, hour one, as we're just getting ourselves set up here, I at least want to touch on the few things that I think often creep up as questions, set the stage for what do we want to be doing with these initial days, hours, whatever, getting set up for the course. And so usually one of the first things I would be talking about would be the textbook. We do have a text for this course. It's not listed in the Beaver store or anything like that. It's not a physical textbook. This is nothing, thankfully, you have to buy or worry about. This is a digital PDF I have provided. It's already in the course. It's embedded into Canvas. You've maybe already found it. If you've not, I'm going to try to include the link a few other places than where it's traditionally been housed. Right now, I know that you can definitely find it as you go into the modules and it says, hey, here's this week, here's what we're covering, here's the link to our readings for the week and the like. So we have that, but going back to what I was alluding to about, 300, 200 level courses, that kind of a thing, we're not going to use our text in this course in that traditional way. Here's the reading. Read the chapter, take the notes, take the quiz, do the exam. We don't have quizzes. And we don't have exams. So the text that we have, it is meant to be a touchstone for the course. It is meant to be a guide and a reference, a resource, a place where you can go. The readings are meant to be laid out in a logical, intuitive way where it coincides with, as we're making these various steps, as we're contemplating, how am I going to define these variables? How are they going to be measurable? What scale of measurement will be appropriate? All this. We have that text there to speak to. What are all those terms? And how do you develop these things? What constitutes a viable, all of that. So it's a different relationship we're going to have to the textbook. And so while you're going through and you're seeing, hey, this is the assigned readings, this is what we're covering, just have that awareness. Do I want you to read it? Of course I do. Absolutely I do. But with where you are at in your education and in your progression of things, the onus will be a lot more on you now to recognize what do you need from the textbook. How do you locate the relevant information instead of having us just say, here's all this, and then give it back to me here in a few weeks and we'll see how well you retained it, kind of thing. So I hope that makes sense. It's going to be an important resource. It's going to be an important, touchstone reference, all those things I already said. But it's not going to be, you need to go through, read it, take notes, have this stuff, stored in such a way that you're going to be forced onto a multiple choice exam or a quiz or anything else. So that will be in the class. You'll find the link. Again, I'll probably send it out via email and other things so that you have access to that anytime, always. And then the follow-up thought to that, because I just wanted to remember to speak to this, which is I forget now the way that I have it laid out within the Canvas shell, but on the syllabus, I know that it specifically speaks to, oh, and by the way, you're going to have to end up doing some statistical analyses down the road. We are going to gather data. We are going to do this project. We are going to have to perform an analysis. The reason I bring that part up here is that I haven't had time, and I'm not going to have time before I make this, and between when I make this and when you see it, to alter that piece of the syllabus. And so it lists off, it says you're going to need this one form of statistical software package, and it lists off a handful of options, SPSS and RStudio and some of the other ones that we tend to utilize. If you have been here at OSU for a little while, if you've had other courses in statistics or in methods, 8 times out of 10, I feel like in the department, we're now using JASP as a software program for statistical analysis. My whole point in bringing it up right now is you would get the impression from the syllabus, like, you need to go out there, you need to find which software package you want, you need to make sure you got it installed and be ready to rock and roll and all of that. If you want to do that, fine. But we're not going to need it for many, many, many weeks. We got a lot to do between now and the time we're going to have anything like data to work with. And so, again, these bridges we'll cross when we arrive there. That will be one of them. And unless you're just really, really, really wanting to be on top of things, you don't need to concern yourself now with what statistical program you will or won't use or will or won't want, whatever the case may be. And in fact, some of the things that I will describe now and in subsequent videos, you'll probably find that a pretty decent proportion of the projects in here, we probably won't need much more actually than Microsoft Excel. I mean, provided that we know how to do the analysis appropriately in it. So for what it's worth, I just put that out there to hopefully avoid any panic or anything like that along the way. So textbook piece, great. The statistical piece, great. So what we are going to be doing, as I've already alluded to, each one of you is going to develop a research idea. Right now, day one, week one, as we're kind of wading into this process, we are going to hit it pretty quickly. In part, yes, because this is an advanced course and we all should kind of have our druthers about us. But we are also packing a lot into a 10-week term. Again, not that it matters, but prior to OSU, I got real accustomed to 16-week semesters, most of the places I had been. That is an entirely different animal than a 10-week course with an 11th week finals. It is hyper condensed. It goes extraordinarily quickly. So we are going to be diving into this pretty hard, pretty fast. So as far as this project goes, where we're at right now, you're going to see in the Canvas shell, there are a number of resources, there are a number of web pages, links, all kinds of resources there to try and get you everything that you need here at the front end to familiarize yourself. Hopefully you all have sort of the prereqs under your belt. You have some familiarity, not just with research methodology and that, but social psychology. And this is one of the things about psychology sort of writ large, which is it has a whole incredible number of sort of subdomains, right? Depending on how granular you want to get with it. But there's whole sections, right? Personality psychology, abnormal, cognitive, developmental, evolutionary, so on, all over the place. And to my mind, I feel like they're all, yes, they have their unique qualities, but they are massively overlapping and interrelated. And so my saying this now is just that I want to impart to you that as you're entering these initial stages, the first things you're going to be needing to do is, number one, just like jumping on the discussion forum. Of course, we have a kind of get acquainted, introduce yourself. Let's start the conversation and get a little bit of getting to know one another insofar as one can online. And what are you interested in? What direction do you want to go? Which is a big question right out of the gates, right? You don't have to have your project yet. You don't have to have your methods. You don't have to have your hypothesis, nothing. But what you need to be thinking about now-ish, just general. What arena are you interested in? What, in relation to social psychology, social behavior, social dynamics, sociology. Again, these things have expansive ways of thinking about them depending on how you choose to approach it. What direction do you think you would like to go with your term? Because this will be a whole term project. So start thinking about that. What about impression formation, right? Our impressions of people. What about attributional styles? What about conformity? What about, right? There's a gazillion things that fall within these social sciences. Try to pin down at least a navigable trail in some direction that you think that you're going to want to go. That's not to say that you have bought the farm, you're stuck with that, period. We can change our minds down the line, but not terribly far down the line, right? All of this is going to accumulate. It all builds on itself. And so if we start down this path too far, and then we have a change of heart, we got to start back at the beginning again and the like. So just having a good generalized sense of the direction in which you want to go. And of course, what we're going to be doing starting immediately and then doing step by step is refinement of what that ultimately is going to look like in terms of your very specific interests, and then your very specific hypothesis, and then your methods and your sampling and everything else that'll come along with that. So again, hopefully there's a lot of resources there. Hopefully you will be able to access those simply enough and at least have that idea of a direction you'd like to go. And part of my reason for emphasizing kind of the overarching nature of the subject matter is that if your interests they don't square right there, they don't fit square peg into a square hole of social psychology. If you got something you're terribly passionate about that's kind of social adjacent, as I say, we can very likely do that too. If that's your heartthrob, that's where you're at, that's what you want and wish to do, let's talk about that, and we can probably make it work. So I want you to have as much freedom, latitude, to make this your own, to make it what you want it to be, and especially when we're throwing ourselves into something so intensely, working, spending so much time, you're going to become very acquainted and very adept in this particular arena. So I want it to be something you want it to be. So we'll go from there. We'll get that all figured out. But just understand at the front end that I have every intention of being incredibly accommodating and then working with you in whatever capacity to end up making that work in the confines of this class. So, as I've said already, we will go through every one of those steps along the way, and I will have all those videos. So let's just do the really big nutshell version of this, which is you are going to do a research project in not a lot of time. We're going to develop the idea. We're going to go through the background. We're going to pull together the literature. We're going to review the literature. We're going to turn that literature into a single intelligible introduction, a discussion, right? Where we're going to take your readers and we're going to walk them through this area, the state of the art in what? Personality attribution, or whatever you want to go with. You're going to become extraordinarily familiar. You're going to be able to write this background. Here's what has been done. Here's how they have defined these things. Here's how they have worked with it in these different paradigms and largely what they have found. And we're all going to bring that down, right, towards your project, which ultimately will be, therefore, right? I've walked you through all this. The rationale now, I just take you that next step. We're going to do this project, and we hypothesize based on everything I just told you. Here's how we're going to set it up. Here's who we're going to sample. Here's what they're going to do. And here's what we hypothesize we're going to find. Here's how we're going to analyze those data. Boom. It's a lot. It's a lot in a 10-week, 11-week course. So without getting down into the weeds, as we will down the road, what I want to tell you now, I will probably say this in every message along the way, but fundamentally, where I want your head to be, no matter the subject matter, no matter the project, no matter any of it, I want you to be thinking pragmatically, being very practical about the choices that you're making, that we're making, as we go through these steps. Because, and I don't fault anybody for this, because the approach and the idea and the attitude is great in the big picture, which is when people come to it, I want to do a really great project. I want it to be something that is awesome, not only that's going to get me a really great grade, but something I can be really proud of, something I can potentially send off, like if you're applying to graduate school and they need a writing sample. You know, you want this, most people want this to be a really great project. And more often than not, people's way of thinking about what constitutes a great project means it has to be very complex, sophisticated, lots of moving parts, you know, all these intricate designs and things like that to really make it a great project. And I don't want to fault anybody for that way of thinking, but I'm going to grab you. I'm going to drag you back from all of that wonderful, excited thinking and all of that. And I'm going to try and shake the practical nature of this into you. We got 11 weeks. We're already in the first one. So to keep yourself even remotely close to sane, in addition to everything else that you apparently have going on in your lives, I've been informed you have lives outside of the classroom. I didn't know that. But apparently you have to juggle an entire life surrounding this class as well. So as it was said to me as an undergraduate, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. That doesn't mean we set this up so ridiculously simple that it's like a kid's project and it's not, you know, appropriate for an advanced level course. But we just have to think very pragmatically about this process. In the past, there has always been a push to do an experimental design. And hopefully as advanced students, you know what I mean by that. Experimental research is very different from correlational research, survey research, you know, other kinds of studies that are totally legitimate research. But when we say experiment, right, we mean something very explicit. That means we have all of this control over all these variables. We can manipulate an independent variable. We can accurately measure a dependent outcome. And we can ultimately say something potentially about causality. And that's great. That's kind of the gold standard as far as research is concerned. And if you choose to go experimental, more power to you. I'm an experimentalist, so my heart grows 5 times bigger when that happens. But with that being said, particularly given the online nature of this, we don't have a lab space, we don't have a meeting space. People have done really great experiments that they have developed online or in PowerPoint or through Visual Basic or a number of different things. But almost without exception, that has led to a lot more work for those individuals. Work that becomes very intractable in the time period that I'm talking about. This is all to basically say that despite in the past, there's been a very active dissuasion towards like correlational research and this kind of thing, you are not going to get that from me. In fact, given the time frame and the parameters of an online course, very likely the best choice that you're going to make is probably going to be doing something that's either just straight up correlational, and that can be surveys, that can be taking different kinds of inventories, questionnaires, surveys, whatever you sort of choose to call them, constructing them based on where are your interests, what variables are you wanting to find out about. And this doubly becomes so when we start talking about sampling. You are going to put this out there either by having participants engage in your experiment, having participants come and engage in some experiment somewhere, or sending out, survey links or whatever the case may be and getting participants to take part. So we need to also then think practically about what does that mean? Getting real, live, warm, breathing human beings to participate in this research. So just a couple things again, very generically here on the front end. We are going to be very realistic when it comes to our sampling. While it sounds wonderful to say, I'm going to get a randomized sample across the population of individuals, that's philosophically great. Where the rubber meets the road, how you can do that? So 99.999999999% of the time, we're going to have a convenience sample. So it's not the most rigorous, most real, scientific approach in the world, but probably that's going to mean people in your social media, people in your other classes, people at your place of employment, people, whoever you can grab off the street and throw into your unmarked van, whatever the case may be. Our sample sizes are going to be reasonable. Our variables need to be reasonable and tractable. When, again, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but if you're starting to think, oh, I probably will do something correlational, maybe a survey or something like that, you can make your own survey. But hopefully you would know at this point too that to create a survey, well, the development of the questions, there is a lot that goes into each and every question and everything about its development and its scoring and everything else. That ends up being a lot too, because you can't just make up any old questions you want and say this is science. So start as you are going through the literature. Again, ahead of myself here, but hopefully you're going to be diving into the literature yesterday and starting to move forward. Start thinking about that. There are pre-existing questionnaires for probably everything you're already thinking of. Yeah, you could come up with a lot of questions to ask about how depressed somebody is. Or you could go extract one of the countless depression inventories that already exists in the literature, has already been validated to whatever degree. Here's its validity, here's its construct validity, here's its internal validity, here's its reliability, here's all the scoring, here's exactly how you do it. And that is not only legit, but very practical. So rather than getting ahead of myself, giving advice on these things that will come along the way, hopefully you've already taken away my big point, of course, which is just to, no matter what stage we're at, no matter where, even day one right now, as you're just beginning to even contemplate what this is going to look like, try to pull it down into that practical realm. Think about where the rubber really meets the road, where you're really going to be sitting come week 8 when you're dealing with your job and one of the kids has COVID and you're already behind and whatever else, right? So we'll just try to be very aware of those things. This is already running longer. See, I'm at a half hour with you already. I can't shut my mouth. So I'm going to wrap this up because I refuse to record any more of these tonight. Last thing I'm going to say, and I will reemphasize this later, but this is important. And it comes back to that idea of where you and I interface as far as this online course goes. So my default position with any online course is that my interaction, my participation, my interface with you specifically is going to be whatever you want it to be. That is to say that particularly in my 200, 300 level courses that are the more traditional format, 9 out of the 10 students in that course, or you know what I mean, I'm never going to have any interaction with at all, outside of they're going to submit their work, they're going to read my announcements in my email and all that, they'll send their stuff in, I grade it, give feedback and whatever else, and they get on with their lives. And we may never have any direct interpersonal Wow. See, it's getting late. This is why I don't want to record anymore. We may never have any direct contact between the two of us. And that, if that's what you're comfortable with, is perfectly fine. I am not going to assert myself or insert myself anywhere into your project, into your email, into anything, unless that's something that you want it to be. So, if you're one of those students, it'll be a little harder in a class like this because this one is so much more involved than take the test, do the quiz, read the book, that kind of thing. But on the other end, and this is where I always try to emphasize more importantly, even though we're online, even though I'm living in Portland and I don't have an office here and this sort of thing, I am here for whatever I can be here for. It's my whole thing. So if you need back and forth, you want to bounce around ideas, you have questions, things aren't clear, you want to work through something, whatever it is, I am here. We can go via email. I'm always on email. We can go via phone. That's perfectly fine. We can go via Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. Any of that is perfectly fine. You just need to let me know so that I know how involved you do or do not want me to be in this process. So take that for what it's worth, and just know that particularly in a class like this where it is so research heavy, and there are going to be, every one of your projects is unique. There's going to be a lot to be getting figured out, that I want to be very involved with you if that's what you want. And mind you, like, that will be much more possible this term. This last spring term, I had research courses, but oh my God, I didn't keep my head above water. It was insane. But thankfully, this now is going to be much more tractable. So if you're somebody who is very nervous about research, classes, statistics and research methods, it's not your thing, which is what I hear all the time, that's why I'm here. And there's absolutely no reason for you to ever not reach out, let me know what I can and can't be doing to help that along. So, okay, we're already well over half an hour and I'm starving. I'm going to go. Welcome. Seriously, I'm very excited to work with all of you this term. And please let me know as you're getting in here, dive into the getting to know you discussion forum so that we can kind of familiarize ourselves with one another, start the conversation a bit, take a look through the syllabus and the Canvas shell, take a look at the text the digital text we'll be using, start thinking. Again, just in very general sense about directions you might like to go in terms of your interests and the like. And for right now, I think that's going to get us going. So you'll be hearing from me again real soon. And I hope all of you are doing really, really well. And yeah, here's to hopefully a great summer. So take care of yourselves and we'll talk soon. All right. Cheers.